Welcome to another episode of Policy Pulse, where we seek to bring clarity, transparency, and accountability into focus. In our previous episode, we clarified key wage concepts: the national daily minimum wage, the base pay, and the living wage. Today, we are diving into a topic that affects millions of workers across Ghana: the national daily minimum wage. How is it determined? And its crucial interactions with base pay and the living wage. We will explore the dynamics at play between the government, labor unions, and employers. Can any of these parties move independently, or are they bound by the need for collaboration? Join us as we discuss the risks of unilateral actions, the challenges of enforcing wage policies, and what a fair and sustainable wage architecture should look like for Mother Ghana. So, whether you are a worker, an employer, or simply someone interested in social justice, this episode is for you. Let's get started. And to dive deep into this discussion with me this morning is, to my immediate right, Dr. Anthony Yaoba, who is former Secretary General of the Trade Union Congress and a member of the governing board of ILO. Sir, you are welcome.
Thank you.
I trust you're doing well.
I'm all right.
Today you look more closer than the general body. I wish Bampo comes to see you.
I went to his office.
I'm hoping you are not coming down to take over his position. The way you are.
It's my brother. That I'm more closer than him.
It's true, it's true. And next to him, it's an important figure. And I'm not surprised that he's sandwiched between two labor union activists. The Chief Executive Officer of Fair Wages and Salaries Commission, Dr. George Smith Graham. Doc, you're welcome. He's the alpha or the genesis of single spine, isn't it? And now he's back into the seat again. Sir, you're welcome.
Thank you very much.
I believe that your second coming will not be like the second coming of Christ, where the world will come to an end, but it's going to bring more hope to our salary administration in Ghana. Next to him,
This might has come to an end. with his second coming. Yes. So it's end and end. So.
end and end. That's wonderful. You know, the conversation has not started, though. You can see the angle of discussion already. And also with us is Mr. Kenneth Kumsin, the Deputy Secretary General of the Ghana Federation of Labor. Sir, you are welcome.
Thank you, sir.
I missed you. I really liked your interactions and the legal perspective you gave to our discussion in the first episode.
Thank you.
I expect to see more today.
Thank you.
And I'm your regular host, Cephas Nadosu. So, recalling from our first episode, Dr. Ba, can you give us some epitome? We tried to look at what the daily minimum wage is, what the living wage is, and the other one, the base pay. You know, to set the tone for today's discussion, we want to see how these three interrelate and how each of them interplay with the other. If you can link that into that.
We discussed in our previous episode, we discussed, first of all, what is the minimum wage? And we differentiated that from the base pay. And if listeners will recall, we said minimum wage is national in character. It is determined by the National Tripartite Committee, and it affects everybody who works in this country, whether they are in the private sector or in the public service. So it's national in character. The base pay is the base or the minimum on a structure that is for public sector workers. In fact, not all of them, but those on the single spire. So we differentiated that and discussed how that is also determined. So national minimum wage is determined by the National Tripartite Committee, but the base pay is fixed by the Public Services Standing Joint Negotiation Committee. And the facilitator of that Public Service Joint Standing Negotiation Committee is Fair Wages and Salaries Commission. So these are two separate discussions or negotiations. One is national, one is for public sector only.
Wow, that's wonderful. So, Mr. Koomson, maybe if I can get your take following from our first episode.
I think that we had a very interesting discussion, which, as indicated by Dr. Ba, clearly distinguished between the minimum wage and the base pay, and obviously the living wage concept. It's important that we, at the time, also clearly drew the distinction that the living wage requires a certain criteria or a certain element in order to make the worker more comfortable, sufficient in meeting his cost of living. Again, I think that we were also very clear that base pay is strictly public sector pay negotiation arrangement, which does not in any way concern private sector or those in other private establishments. So yes, just to add a little to the opening remarks of my colleague.
Thank you very much.
So the dimension of the living wage is very important, and I think we spent
a lot of time
on it. So I'm glad that Koomson has brought this. We discussed this and we made it clear that the minimum wage is for one person, the worker who presents himself or herself at the workplace. But the living wage goes beyond the worker who presents himself or herself at the workplace. It is for a household of 4. And we discussed how the 4 is calculated in terms of adult equivalences and so on. So the listeners should note that national minimum wage is determined for the worker who presents himself or herself at work. The employer is supposed to pay not less than that. But living wage is a national social policy issue which governments adopt to say that I want my people to live above poverty. Therefore, we have to pay living wage. And the living wage is calculated, taking into account the household, where the worker is coming from. So the household, the worker, the spouse, and 2 children.
Then what it means is that in determining the minimum wage, considerations must be given to factors that determine a living wage. Because if a minimum wage does not serve the purposes of a living wage, then it means that there's a disconnect. Because it means that by extension, you realize that every employee, takes care of 1 or 2, at least the wife and maybe a child. And so what it means is that in determining the daily minimum wage, considerations must be given to factors that determine the living wage, isn't it?
It does. We are guided by ILO Convention 131, and we discussed this the last time, and Koomson actually spent time explaining the factors. We have the economic factors that are in the convention, and we have social factors. Now, the social factors is what we are raising. The social factors require social policy, which cuts across the entire economy, the entire society, which says that people who work to support the development of this country should not live in poverty. Now, if that is the case, then we already have minimum wage. What we are expecting is to now move from minimum wage to a living wage. And that requires a social policy which says that let us consider paying the least salary to those who work based on the household as guided by the Ghana Living Standard Survey results. And that is the living wage. That is the wage that is sufficient for a household of 4, at least 4. But in our society, people take care not only of their children, they take care of their mothers, their fathers, their uncles, their nieces, their nephews, and so on. But at the same time, we know that employers go into business to also make money.
Profit.
At the same time, we expect the private sector employers to employ more people.
So you need to create a balance between the thank you very much. In fact, and since you mentioned the social factors, that brings in the policy owner,
yes,
who is Dr. Graham. I would want to have your introductory remarks. Then, if you could dovetail into how the daily minimum wage is arrived at.
Thank you very much. As the two earlier speakers mentioned, the national daily minimum wage is governed by conventions. And like he mentioned, that one is done by the tripartite, government, employees, and labor. And so it's national in character. It affects both the private sector and the public sector. But when it comes to the base pay is purely public sector, and it's purely negotiated between government and the unions.
Okay.
And so in this case, in the unions, we form what we call the Public Services Standing Joint Negotiation Committee. So that negotiates the base pay. But like Doc mentioned, if you talk about living wage, it's a different ball game altogether. I believe that Ghana can aspire to get there, but we need to give ourselves some time and plan towards it, because it takes several factors into consideration. The living expenses of a worker, like Doc mentioned, it's looking at the yourself, your spouse, and two children. It takes care of even the accommodation issues, the number of calories that there's so many factors go into the determination of that. Even in the developed world, not all developed countries are able to implement the living wage. So it tells us that there are a few challenges here and there, but I wouldn't mind that we develop the framework and give ourselves time. Then looking at this framework, if base pay is this figure, assuming we are moving away from base pay to living wage will be this. What can be the transition within which we can get there? And it can be done. We only need to give ourselves some time into the future and plan towards it.
Doc, I think you can still go on and let me know, what are the considerations in determining the daily minimum wage? Because there's this general saying, it has become more populist, meanwhile it is that impacting, that our take-home pay do not take us home. And I'm sure that if you are considering a daily minimum wage, then you are looking at something that can at least take the worker home, and so he can be able to leave something. So what are the considerations?
First of all, as we indicated, it is determined by the tripartite. Now, the tripartite has a technical committee that takes several factors into consideration to come up with a proposal. And since I was there the first time, I think what the worker does not know is that there is a role that is played by the organized labor in there that always enhances the life of the worker. But we've had situations where if we use a formula, and the increase that was supposed to come will be about 4%. But at the negotiation table, the workers will tell you, yeah, that is a formula. Now we want the political, the political angle as well. And so, although the increase should have been 4%, then the political angle, which is the negotiations, will come in and then give workers about 10, 15, or whatever percentage that they get. So the technical committee first does its work. A tripartite will meet, and the tripartite will refer everything to a technical committee. The technical committee will meet, do all the analysis using the formula that we have. Then after that, when they get whatever percentage that in their view is supposed to be because of the formula, it is sent back to the plenary, the tripartite. The tripartite will look at it and adopt what they brought for negotiations. So they don't only just adopt, but they adopt it for negotiations. So after that, negotiations will determine whatever we arrive at. So that is the procedure for the national daily minimum wage.
Mr. Coulson, coming from Dr. Graham's, comments is made, where the formula, the standing formula is used. But then when it comes to the plenary, you realize that sometimes the formula gives you percentage that is not acceptable to the labor unions. So at the plenary, does it become consultative or negotiate? Or you negotiate? What process do you use? Because if you're going by the laid-down structures, there are formulas that apply, and that is scientific. And I'm sure that in arriving at the formula, many considerations have been are taking place. And so if after the application of the formula, so the plenary do not find whatever percentage adjustments acceptable, then how do you move to the next stage? Is it through suggestive approach to negotiation, to consultation? What happens there?
So I think that first of all, let me attack the formula. The formula is clearly diseased, it's cancerous. It's a formula that I'm sure is superintended by government to determine what should become the levels of the wages, minimum wage, and by extension base pay. We talked about the ILO Convention 131, and you realize that in the determination of the national minimum wage or the minimum wage fixing convention, it provides a criteria, and I said we talked about last week. First of all, the cost of living. The cost of living. Inflation is a measure in the changes of prices. It doesn't measure the cost of living. That is the point I want to put on record. The cost of living that is established, the changes over a period of time, is what inflation measures. And that is what the formula in the computation or determination of the national minimum wage appears to address. So what is the inflation last year, this year? Then there is a certain calculation to arrive at an adjustment based upon inflation. By virtue of the convention which underpins the determination of a wage, it talks about the cost of living. So the concern we have raised is that what is the actual cost of living, where a reasonable man will say that for a worker who works into CLOSAC secretariat or farm or any company, whether private sector or public sector, what is his minimum wage or what is spending in a day for just a person. Then the same formula talks about the need of the employee and his family. And the question that arises is that what is the need of the employee and his family? Shelter, food, education, come again? Clothing. In the determination of a national minimum wage, you are looking at that. But coming to your question, where the formula has succeeded to play against workers and made government, successive government, very excited about a percentage adjustment, obviously we would have to react, resist, and then challenge it. And that's why when the technical subcommittee, which is a subset or a group mandated, engage to have a meeting, look at all the variables, and come up with a proposal, at the plenary, you could see a clear rejection. And I've seen Dr. Ban in several occasions and others voice their discontent about the levels that have been provided. At that forum, then it becomes consultation, negotiations, discussions, and sometimes lobbying. Because the formula is defective, you cannot also try to be more aggressive and traditional and you have to engage because you are looking at a formula that has been accepted by the parties, that is being invoked, that is being implemented. So you can be resistant, but it has a certain boundary. And that's why lobbying and so on and so forth comes in at the meeting. There have been times when we have adopted what we call the magnanimity clause. And this clause, sometimes, often, when it's being deployed or is being invoked, depart from the proposals that are submitted by the technical committee. And the question that arises again is that what is magnanimity clause? This clause is saying that I'm pleading with you, disregard the formula, and then do something that will not create industrial unrest. Because the worker out there does not understand the duties of your formula and how you arrive at that. Most especially when you are seeing Article 71 office holders, CEOs of state-owned enterprises and their employees having to be awarded or increase their pay by setting shocking levels. Some 71%, the year we got 4% minimum wage pay rise. Article 71 office holders clearly were enjoying 71% pay rise. Then you are having CEOs and state-owned enterprises also increasing their pay by 35 and 45 respectively. The question then arises is that what happened at the minimum wage base pay negotiations or consultation forum? So it becomes a difficulty. So the answer to the question once again is that you have to dialogue. You have to discuss. You have to lobby government. You have to get government to appreciate that the formula being defective is producing a rate which is not acceptable, which is not implementable, and which does not address the fundamental problems of the ordinary Ghanaian worker who has to depend on that wage for survival. And most especially, you're looking at a legal instrument by the International Labour Organization that should set the framework, the basis for that determination. And that we talked about the cost of living. So the employee looks at himself and says, look, this certainly does not address my cost of living. And so it's a problem.
So, quick one. Which identifiable bodies constitute a technical committee, subcommittee?
Oh, it's the tripartite.
Tripartite. So labor is represented.
So labor is represented, employees represented,
And that
government represented.
That one is
It's
just the
same
use of
tripartite
the
structure.
formula.
Yes.
So, Dr. Ban, you've been...
Let me add to it.
But if you add, I want you to
technical-
also conclude by answering this question, that if you have found the formula defective, why haven't you attacked the formula to get that resolved? But then you allow the defective formula to be applied before coming to lobby, engage. I mean, what have you? So you can add and answer this for us as well.
That's very interesting. I can assure you, and thank you very much, my brother Kumsen, for bringing this whole issue up and the way you articulated it. That's exactly what we have done. In many, many years, we have attacked the formula. There was a time in 1995, we brought in ILO, because we attacked the formula, we brought in ILO to come and help us, review the formula for fixing minimum wage. Somehow, when they came, they relied on the Ghana Living Standard Survey, and the results were very clear. The cost of living that they found in the Ghana Living Standard Survey did not match the formula we were using. But as I said the last time, tripartite committee is made up of 16 people. 5 from government, 5 from employers, private sector employers, and 5 from organized labor. In addition to the government 5, we have the chairperson, who is the minister. So the 16 people.
11.
11
Against 5.
Against 5. And employers pay and government pays. It's organized labor that demands, that receives, demands and receives. So obviously, we are not in the majority. So it's really tough there. One thing I don't miss is negotiating minimum wage after I left office. Negotiating base pay. Because, look, during that period, as for base pay, sometimes we go on for 3 months, 5 months, we are not done. Minimum wage, same. The point that my brother Kumsin made is very, very valid. The thing is, inflation, that is in the formula, and even the GDP the contribution to labor that now we introduced recently into the formula. The formula is not scientific, as you said. It's objective, but it's not scientific. Because there are many subjective things in there that you have to discuss and agree before they put in there. And then what it turns out is that over all these years, we are talking about 20 Ghana cedis a day for 8 hours of work. That is woefully inadequate. And therefore, this is the time, and I'm glad Dr. Graham is here, because Bahamas government's idea of bringing in the Independent Emoluments Commission is to actually upgrade the Fair Wages Commission, to bring everybody who works for government, public service, must have fair wages. It's not that some people are being paid, as Mr. Mamu said the last time, and others are really struggling. So, yes, we have to change the formula. The formula has been attacked by Labour many, many, many years. Dr. Graham is here, but somehow, because we are in the minority, it is extremely difficult to actually bring our issue up the way we want it to come up.
Okay, that's fine. So the understanding here is that in the determination of the daily minimum wage, it takes the tripartite to come to a conclusion.
Yes.
But then,
with a lot of political influence.
Okay, so is it possible for government or any of the three identifiable groups within the tripartite to just come out and declare its minimum wage?
No. It happened once. I think 2001, 2002, MPP government, the Minister for Finance then declared the minimum wage. But thank goodness the president reversed it. The president, Kufuor, said, no, the practice is this. The convention says the competent authority fixes the minimum wage in consultation with labor and employers. So go and meet with them and do it. So it is not acceptable that one party comes out to do that. And in the history of fixing minimum wage, I think that was the only time that... but let me add that there was a time in Liman time, in 1981, when the government, I shouldn't say unilaterally because it was very positive, decided that the minimum wage would move from 4 cities to 12 cities.
That one you accepted it?
Of course, why not? That's the point I'm making. So sometimes if you have government, which says, but remember in the 80s, the conditions in this country were horrible. Inflation reached over 100%. So Liman government, the highest increase we have ever had in the minimum wage was by Liman. During that period that Ghana was burning, he decided that people who work and go home with minimum wage should receive 12 instead of 4. And that's huge.
Okay. So I want to find out, Dr. Graham or yourself, Mr. Kunsi, can take this up. You referred to the 2001, where the then Minister for Finance unilaterally declared a minimum wage. I want to find out if there were any lessons learned from that approach in the determination of the minimum wage, and whether, because I think in the last media review, in some synopsis of documents that I've cited, it appeared or is alleged that the current Minister for Finance mentioned that IMF in the negotiations and with government has agreed and pegged the minimum wage to about 10% or something. So I wanted to find out, if it is true, are there any lessons learned from what happened in 2001? Maybe Mr. Kumsi can...
It's in bad faith for any minister of state, or even the president, to unilaterally declare an increase in the minimum wage or a base pay. Even in the private sector, that will induce or that will generate tension. So in 2021, in 2001, I'm not seized with the circumstances that led to the declaration of the minimum wage by the then minister. But I can imagine that it could potentially be that Labour were not accepting the rate or the levels with which government wanted to give to Ghanaian workers, for which reason government or the minister might have decided to go ahead and announce as he deems fit. Barring that, I fail to see any other reason for which that is done, that could have been done. Because we've seen that kind of tension surfacing and showing up in our deliberations and meetings all the time. That is number one. Again, you talked about whether there's been any lessons, and the media report that was submitted by the Minister of Finance to Parliament, capping the adjustment of minimum wage and by extension base pay by 10%, whether that is a replication or repetition of that. I think that
if it is there any lessons learned following from the
so
2001?
I haven't seen it.
Okay.
I think that is a social media satire or something to provoke organized labor. I've seen other reports that came, or other social media flyers that came from my good friend, Fairways and Salaries Committee, saying that they are going to finish the negotiation of minimum wage by August ending. And then one the person said, no, Dr. Graham won't say that. So I know a lot of things happen in this time when we are preparing towards negotiations. I fail to accept that that was done. But granting without admitting that that was done, that would be in a bad faith. Because you cannot determine the outcome of a negotiations when the negotiation itself has not taken place. And more so when we are talking about the realities of the cost of living, which is essentially the grounds for whatever demands that we make. Lessons, I believe that where you have a government where there are litany of strikes, industrial action, where you cannot prosecute your government business, that should inform you that you cannot unilaterally be taking decisions, because that will then infuriate the sensibilities of the various people. They are also not under obligation to accept when you declare it. In as much as you could possibly decide, because if you look at the Act 113, is a national tripartite committee seized with the mandate to determine the national minimum wage.
And not the minister.
The minister only by the Gazette publish it. So that act in itself is ultra-virus. It infringes the law. It's a violation of our law. So you'll be acting in a manner that will give rise to conflict. Is that what you want in a country where you want peace of mind to govern? I don't think any reasonable government would want to take that tangent.
I think that the best person to answer this is Dr. Graham.
He's about to answer.
So what I want to find out is whether that allegation is true. If it is, what informed it? And if it is not, then how we are addressing that public perception so that we don't agitate labor. Then if it is true, can we use this forum to educate our viewers to understand the rationale behind going against the tripartite system?
From where I said it cannot be true.
Okay.
I've not read it anywhere, but looking at the actions of the minister, it cannot be true. Because as government, discussions are already ongoing amongst ourselves in preparation towards the negotiation. So if it is true, government would have just come out to say, look, Fairways and Salaries Commission, this is what we are thinking. But that is not the case. The discussion that is going on clearly shows that that information cannot be correct. Again, a media asked me and said, organized labor says they are looking for 50%. And I said, you are mentioning it. So far as we are concerned in our dealings with organized labor has not formally tabled anything before us. And he said, but the negotiations have not started, and we are in August. Are you sure that you can start the negotiation before August? I said, why are you talking about starting? I'm interested in concluding the negotiations early. So let's talk about ending the negotiations and not starting. And then they went and published that. But that,
Right.
but that aside, let me say that although the Labour is perceived to be or is in the minority when it comes to the tripartite, Labour's influence on the Technical Committee is very huge. The formula has been reviewed over time. Every year the committee meets, the formula is reviewed. Every year the committee meets, the formula is reviewed. So the formula itself is not a perfect formula. And I think that we can learn from other countries as well and see how best we can improve on those formulas. But with regards to announcing a daily minimum wage by a government, I doubt this government will do that.
No, not at all.
The government will not do that. So
Not at all.
it will definitely be part of the negotiations, and then it will be a negotiated daily minimum wage and not something that has been dictated by a government.
In fact, thank you very much. And to our viewers, I'm sure it's on this platform that you are getting clarity to this allegation. We are one country, and even though the identifiable bodies that form the tripartite have their interests that must be met, we should not do that with unsubstantiated pronouncements that can bring discomfort in the Labour front. So, Dr. Graham, we thank you very, very much. But before we go on a commercial break, you had the Fair Wages and Salaries Commission. Do we have fair wage in Ghana?
Good question.
That's a very good question. If you look at it holistically, and you look at the entire government revenue, and you look at the fact that even up to now, we still have over 50% of the entire government revenue going into public sector compensation. That should tell you something. But I keep saying that, look, maybe the numbers in the public sector may be a factor. But we need to understand that every country runs a political economy and not purely an economy.
Okay.
And so organized labor, I'm sure, and organized labor understands. Anytime we are going for negotiations, some of the critical things that come up is that, look, government is the employer. And as the employer, government could have reduced the
Number of employees. So they can pay more.
So that they can pay more to them for everybody to be satisfied. But as you do that, the people who will be employed will enjoy the more. The rest will go home. They will end up being social misfits, create all sort of insecurity for the country. Already with a high unemployment situation, that my concern is that 50% or more that government uses, how equitably it is distributed. For me, it's my biggest concern. And it is different. He mentioned that the year they got 4%, Article 71 was getting 70-something percent. The Article 71 is a bit dicey when you do the analysis that way. Under no circumstance should anybody work for 4 years, and when you are exiting before a salary is determined. And given to you. Now, when that happens, it means there's a cumulative benefit of 4 years that is being given to you at a time that you are exiting. So it comes in lump sum, but it shouldn't happen. And that is why the president, as part of his research agenda, is talking about the Independent Emolument Commission. So there will be a constitutional body that will determine the emoluments of everybody in the public service, from the president to the least paid public servant. Also be able to set national wage policies across board for all institutions, even including the state-owned enterprises. That is not to say that state-owned enterprises are going to be put on one structure, because they are profit-making organizations. But the whole idea of allowing their management to be the ones that are sitting with their unions and doing rob my back, I rob your back. May not be there. There will be an institution that will go into it, look at your financials, look at it, and then be able to help determine your salary. When we went to Ho, the Single Spine Forum, from Ho to Takoradi. After Takoradi, we decided to win institutions of government subvention. And we successfully weaned off about 7 institutions from government payroll. And they're on their own. But every year before they determine their salary, they're supposed to come back. You look at their financial, how they're operating, and then you determine their salaries for them. So it encourages them to work more. It encourages them to be productive and all that. So that for me is the most. How do we share the 50% equitably? It's the most critical aspect. And then there are challenges, but I believe that the Independent Emolument Commission should be able to handle some of these challenges.
Thank you very much. We'll go on a short commercial break. But when we come back, I would want to know, how do we make our wages further fair? Right. Thank you very much. Listeners, stay tuned. We'll be back in a short while. Welcome back to Policy Pulse, where we are trying to understand how the daily minimum wage is arrived at. But before we left, Dr. Smith Graham, the CEO of Fair Wages and Salaries Commission, was trying to let us understand the extent to which himself and his organization are trying to make our wage as fair as possible. And I want to find out from him, looking at the trajectory, where we've come from as far as the implementation of single spine is concerned, the agenda or the objectives for the setting up of the single spine salary structure, and the disparity that has occasioned along the line. What is this institution doing to make the wages of the Ghanaian worker more fairer than it is?
Thank you very much. You know, in ensuring the fairness of salary regime in every country, it is based on the values of the various jobs. Now, before the implementation of the single spine, job evaluation was done. And as we said, we valued the jobs. And so in valuing the jobs, we were able to tell the value of a particular job in relation to another job in another public sector organization. Unfortunately, in Ghana, everybody thinks that because, like say, I'm an accountant, and so once I'm an accountant in Control and Accountant General Department, it means that every accountant in the public service will have to earn the same. That is an approach that can be adopted. That is, if the accountants are transferred from an organization to another organization. That is an approach that can be adopted. But if you go into the evaluation, the accountant in a Control and Accountant General Department perform different roles. And if you assess the job or evaluate the job to another accountant in another organization, you notice that the values of the jobs are different. And so these are all considerations that went into it. Again, the factors that were used in evaluating the jobs, the 13 factors. In Ghana, we've used 2 different approaches. The health sector used 16 factors. The single spine used 13 factors. I keep telling my people, how fair is the 13 factors that we use? Does that mean that the 13 factors was comprehensive enough? As a commission, if you look at our law, we're supposed to have come out with our own national model, job evaluation methodology. And we've not been able to do that. We've tasked a team to consult so that we'll be able to come up with our own job evaluation methodology. So once the methodology is done, methodology is accepted, and we know that this is a methodology we are going to use in evaluating all the various jobs in the public sector, that will help us to understand some of these things. But some of the institutions, although they are on the single spine, they don't belong to the same organization, in spite of the fact that they're in the public service. Like I'm saying, those days before the 1992 Constitution, when the various services were established, all the institutions were under the head of civil service.
Yeah.
In that way, it's easy to say that every accountant should be paid the same
So much.
salary. Every doctor should be paid the same salary. Every engineer should be paid, because you'll be moved from one organization to another organization, you'll be transferred around.
Yeah.
But now they are separate organizations, and the work and the functions in those organizations are different. So when you do the evaluation, then you have those challenges. But as we move on, these are all things that we are going to have thorough discussions with organized labor moving forward, and everybody moving forward to see how best we can deal with it, because the complaints still keep coming. I'm a lawyer, and my counterpart in this organization is earning more than me. But when we went into it, we realized that some lawyers go to court, others don't go to court, others are only in the organization researching, others research and go to court because all those things influence the results of the job evaluation. So we are hoping that as we move forward, we'll be able to come up with a consensus model that Ghana can apply, that will make everybody at least we'll create some fairer situations so far as the job evaluation methodology is concerned.
Okay, so in view of the model that he's thinking about, that can speak and align with the Ghanaian concept, the absence of it creates the perception that there could be some level of distortions as far as the application of the single spine is concerned. If you agree with me, how do you think we can address it, Mr. Kumsin? Doctor, I'll come to you. Yeah.
First of all, I think we need to correct a misleading impression here. Government of Ghana is government of Ghana. Different from the private sector, where you have the mining sector, manufacturing sector, textile sector. You have different sectors. In the evaluation of the jobs of employees in public service, you take government of Ghana as one corporate entity.
And we are all employees.
So whichever factors that were used in evaluating the value of the job of a civil servant, of a nurse, comparing the nurse with somebody who is working at Cocoa Board, and you tell me that the Cocoa Board CEO or manager, his job is more valuable to the country as compared to the nurse, is that what we are saying here? You take the medical doctor at Kolebu, who saves lives every now and then, and you are telling me that comparing his job value and that of an accountant at the controller and accountant division, his job is more valuable to the state than that person? Is that what we are saying? Is that the conclusion? Listen, I think we have to be serious as a country. I said that before the first political party existed in this country, 1948, TUC existed. It was labor that had to handle and manage the colonial administration to the extent that when Kwame Nkrumah showed up, he had to fall on labor for our independence. If labor is remunerated well, compensated well, if pay systems are equitable, they are fair, and the determination of the various pay that we take home is seen as very transparent, I think this country would make a lot of progress, number one. Number two, I have a very difficulty in accepting that we look at other job holders, because you see, it is about competence, it's about qualification, it's about skill. The job analysis of every single job holder is what must tell us how he should be compensated in this particular country. So I disagree with Dr. Graham, respectfully disagree with Dr. Graham, that in going forward, it's important that we look at Ghana as one entity, so that in determination of which job is of value than the other, we are all working into a one GDP, a gross domestic product. We are all working towards a particular basket. It's not as compared to the other private sector. So this is, for me, a very critical stage. And if we don't go into it with that kind of thinking, we are continuously going to have a very critical mass group of employees sidelined, whose income and salaries would never take them even to the street where they'll take car to their house. Whereas we see the other CEOs and what have you riding in all the luxurious cars. That's on the lower side. The other thing to has to do with the 4 years that Dr. Graham talked about, that in the giving 4% salary adjustment for a particular year, the following year 7%, and then the comparison that was made with the fact that if Article 71 office holders are leaving office, 4 years they put together, and then they give them 71%. Let's use the same analogy and say that for the ordinary employee on the single spine, in 4 years, he should be able to say, I have received 71% pay rise. If we can say that...
So we can stagger over the period of 4 years?
We can stagger over the period of 4 years. But if I am saying over the period of 4 years, as an ordinary employee...
But I believe that that's what he says, that we need to
No, it's a different conversation altogether. It's a different conversation altogether. If an ordinary employee who is earning just about 500 Ghana cedi is earning 4% on his base, and someone who is earning about 50,000 Ghana cedi is being given 71% over a 4-year period, what kind of injustice are we promoting in this country? So we are very clear in our mind as organized labor that in going forward, the formula for the computation of the base pay and the minimum wage has to be re-looked at. The parameters, there has to be a rebasing, that's how they call it, of the parameters to include the cost of living and the need of the employee and his family. That is the only way you can ensure there is fairness, there's equity, and there is a certain level of wage that really pays the employee what he deserves.
Thank you. Doc, okay, all right, okay.
Just a quick correction. When I tackled the 70% and the 4%, I indicated that he said the year they got the 4%, they got 70. So I was correcting that impression that it was not a comparison of 4% and 70%. Yeah. I was not justifying the 70%.
Okay, all right. Okay. Sorry.
That is one. Secondly, the comparison between the doctor, the nurse, and all that, and the cocoa board are completely different. The cocoa board is a state-owned enterprise that is supposed to be running on profit-making basis. They are not. So if you go to cocoa board, they have hospitals. So they will have doctors in their hospitals, they have nurses in their hospitals, and all that. So, but they are not part of the single spine. These are state-owned enterprises on their own. They are not part of the single spine. So if the comparison is for those within the single spine, then I will understand. But when you talk about those outside the single spine, that is not to say that we agree to, or I agree to, the salary that is being enjoyed by these state-owned enterprises. But because they're on their own and they determine their salaries between the unions and their board, and maybe to some extent the Ministry of Finance, That is why it is the reason why, as part of the reset agenda of the president wants to reset a public sector compensation as well by bringing in the Independent Emolument Commission. So
Which is
what
going to
he's
handle-
saying will be able to address, the Independent Emolument should be able to address the concerns he's talking about.
But it's good you brought this one in, because I was going to ask Dr. Ban that the accounts say that Ididija any emunamuna nenam. So if you are employed by a corporate body called Ghana and you work in a different jurisdiction of that corporate body, your activity may not result into profit per se, but your activity also creates the enabling environment and the vehicle for the profit-making of institution to drive on. Why would we say that because you create profit, so you must earn more? At the end of the day, that profit belongs to Ghana. And the capital that sets up that institution belongs to Ghana. So, Dr. Ban, I don't know. Because we need to see how we can even out this kind of disparity. It may not be today, but at least there should be the conscious understanding of the situation and the working towards it. I don't know what you have to say
The
to
major
it.
strategic shifts is on its way.
Okay.
Okay.
And
And I
the
think,
major strategic shift is the reset agenda
Okay.
to reset public sector compensation. So the Independent Emolument Commission will be a strategic shift to that.
And in our last discussion,
Yeah.
the way we concluded was that wages in this country should be reset also.
Yes. That's exactly.
It should be part of the research agenda. Going back to fairness, let me take this opportunity to explain a few things. We should first admit that public sector wages and the way we reward public sector workers is not fair. I think that is something that is clear, it's obvious. And that is why we need the research. That's why we need the Independent Emoluments Commission. And then flowing from there, we should now have a wage policy. And that wage policy must be such that the goal is to motivate public sector workers to work, to put in the best they can. That is any wage policy. The main thing is, how do we motivate people who are working for public service to put in the best? That question will be answered by some objectives that we create for ourselves. First of all, we say, let us have a salary structure or reward system that is internally equitable. Because human beings, we don't only look at our salaries, we look at other people's salary.
Definitely.
And the point you made about a Akan proverb, that
Ididija mani pa.
I was part of the committee that was set up by Kufuor at the time to look at the complaints coming on the health sector salary structure. There were two people having
Streams.
the same position in the health service. One was earning 26 Ghana cedis more than the other. That 26 Ghana cedis was good reason enough for the woman who was occupying that position to write to the committee that why is it that that other person is earning 26 Ghana cedis more than
me.
You can imagine, 26 is immaterial, but the woman felt so strongly that it means that they value the other
person's
woman's job than her. So relativities are important. People look at salaries first, their salary, and look at others. So when we have that new wage policy for public service, we are looking at how do we motivate them. That is the goal. Then the policy will clearly spell out how are we going to make sure internally we are equitable. Look, we are talking about a situation in the same public service. As my brother Kumsin said, if you go and work for some SOE, and it's a profit-making SOE, when your kids and your wife and your husband are sick, where do they go?
They go to the government
It
hospital.
is that wage policy which will address all those things to make sure there is internal equity. But another important, We have a situation where the president of this country, appoints me now to go and head a state-owned enterprise, and my salary is 10 times more than his salary. This is not right. This cannot be fair. The president himself appoints me, and then at the end of the month, I take 6 times, 10 times the salary of the president. How should that happen? Mm-hmm. Are you saying that your job is valued more than the president's job? Who in this country has that kind of job?
That's a good question.
So, in fact, the president himself knows. I mean, President Mahama, we have worked with him when he was vice, until when he became president, and now he is an advocate of fairness. And I am very confident that with bringing Dr. Graham back to the fair wages, we should together achieve it.
That's true.
But the other aspect of the wage policy I am advocating is what we call external competitiveness. If you have a wage policy which is not externally competitive, you are finished. You lose all your professionals. Because we have a minimum wage in this country, which is 20 cedis. The places where our professionals are moving to, Canada, UK, Australia, US, if you look at their minimum wage per hour, you will marvel. Therefore, if we want to keep our professionals here, our doctors, our specialists, our consultants, all these people who matter for this country to move on, if we want to keep them here, the wage policy I'm talking about doesn't only have a goal of motivating public sector workers. It must also address the internal equity issues that we have now, and at the same time address the external competitiveness that allows Ghanaian professionals to live and work in Ghana.
Thank you, Dr. Ban. We're talking about equity here. We're talking about fairness. And I think one objective of setting the daily minimum wage is to ensure that the ordinary worker down there is treated with, fairly, not abused to some extent. So, any of you can take this up. How do we ensure the compliance with the national daily minimum wage, pronouncement, or when it's gazetted, to ensure, because sometimes you meet people, you see the kind of job they are doing, and they tell you how much they are paid, and you wonder whether they're in Ghana. So how do we ensure adherence? So maybe from your policy direction.
Within the Ministry of Labor, we have the Labor Department, we have the Department for Inspection. Yeah. Now, they are the ones who are supposed to be ensuring that these things are done, that no organization pays lower than the national minimum wage. And I think probably because of logistical constraints, they are not able to do that, because the reality be told, the ministry is one of the most underfunded ministries always in the country. And so they have all those challenges. The ability to move around the various industries to be able to monitor these things are a challenge. And I think that is why we are unable to monitor. But if even they're able to come out with, let's say, a toll-free line or certain channels where institutions or individuals who are being paid lower than the minimum wage can report, then that can even serve as a very good avenue of dealing with it. So once you receive the complaint, you can move straight into those organizations and get it corrected. So I think probably they may need to look at their approach as well. And if they're able to educate the whole country, no, this is the minimum wage. Information goes around, everybody knows that this is how much below which no institution is supposed to pay. Once that is done, if your organization is paying you less than this amount of money, call this line or send a text to this line, or in this modern age of technology, which is so that they can zoom in on that organization and get it rectified. I think that approach can help.
Allow me to come in with a more effective. I agree with Dr. Graham when he says we should resource
The Labour Department,
the Labour
Inspectorate
Department,
Division.
the Inspectorate Division to
the
ensure
monitoring,
enforcement and compliance. The most effective way to get this done is for the workers themselves to ensure that they have a union. You see, if you have a union,
Okay.
the union will never allow any employer to pay below the minimum wage. But if you operate in an environment when there is no union, everybody is on his or her own, then that is the thing. That is where you expect chief labor officer or inspectorate division to come round and do. But the unions, so I urge all workers, wherever you find yourself, you have the right to form or join a union. And when there is a union, the union will never allow anyone to be paid below the minimum wage.
You know,
And this is a fact.
That's true.
If you go to the
That's
unionized
true. I didn't
workplaces,
think about
there is no unionized workplace where the employer pays below the
right.
minimum wage.
right.
It doesn't happen. It will never happen.
I agree with you, but then also let's look at the practicality of the situation, our environment. In the first place, the job opportunities are not there. Then you have this guy who, even haven't gone through whichever level of education, is compelled to go and do menial jobs, right? So that's what they call by day or whatever it is. Such person, I mean, which union is he going to join
casuals, yeah.
before he will say that he's going to be employed? Meanwhile, these organizations, these private institutions, informal sector that employ these guys are not compelled to say that to employ or engage somebody, you need to go through this protocol or go through this union. So how can we enforce this thing? And also without sacrificing the opportunity for these poor people on the ground to earn a living.
So I perfectly agree with my senior colleague, Dr. Ba. His answer is...
I don't want to feel that because you're union biased, that's why you are canvassing for people to join in.
That's why you
What Dr. Graham said is administratively prudent and is the way to go administratively. And the fact that Dr. Graham had also indicated that resource constraints over the years has been the reason why. Because obviously, Labour Department, the Inspectorate Division, is seized with that mandate to inspect and to ensure that employers comply, among others. So it is the way to go. But what my senior colleague has just said, it offers us the opportunity to educate the public that Article 21 and 24 of the Supreme Law of this country gives the right of every worker to form or join a trade union of his choice. And it's not just for the social association, but economically to ensure that your economic rights are also secured, including the enforcement implementation of minimum wage, number one. The Labour Act, as we have it, Section 79, is also very clear and ambiguous on the right of a worker to form a union. So we cannot live here without letting the workers know in this country that no employer can prevent you under the laws of this country from joining a union. We also understand very clearly that after we have communicated or government has issued a communique that any employer who for some reason or who decides to pay below the minimum wage has flouted the law and the law will deal with that person. We as organized labor must also begin an advocacy. Moving from one place to the other, talking to Ghanaians, engaging like your platform you have given us, so that workers will understand that if you are a cleaner in a restaurant and you are being paid 300 Ghana cedi, that is against the law. If you don't have a union, you can report to the trade union, any union of your choice. The Federation of Labour is there, the Ghana TUC is there. There are litany of unions around. Report. And once you lodge that complaint, I think that it will help in ensuring that that compliance is adhered to without any further exploitation.
In fact, the next time I have you on set, right, I'm going to keep a record of the number of references and quotations you make to the law.
But I'll give an example of what my brother just said.
Okay.
About even if you don't have the opportunity to be in a union, because maybe you are a liberal, you are somewhere. Let me tell you, before this act, Act 651, we had Act 299
Yes.
of 1965. That law allows every worker who works in this country, whether they are unionized or not, to report their matter to the TUC.
Yes.
It is
Yes.
this new act that took that out.
Yes. Yes.
That doesn't prevent anyone from approaching any union.
Yes.
I can share myself. At the time I was head of industrial relations and research,
Yes.
there were ladies who were working in a foreign firm. Then they came to me. They walked to me and said, this is what is happening in our workplace. One lady got pregnant. When she returned after delivery, she was posted to some inferior position. Then, when she complained, they decided to sack all the ladies.
Wow.
So they came to my office. Then I wrote to the company. And then they brought a consultant who was a white man. The man said, but TUC, what clout do you have to write to us? Because these women, they are not part of your union.
Union.
All what I had to do was to quote the
Quote the
right
law.
clause
Yes.
of the law.
Yes.
Then the man said, oh, is that the case? Okay. In my country, if you are not a union person, unions don't come into enterprise. On the basis of what was in the law, the man now went and responded to my letter, and we started engagement. And it was through that they still insisted they would not rehire them, but they agreed to pay redundancy, and we negotiated the redundancy for the ladies.
Wonderful.
You know,
That's
so
a good example.
we
That's
can
a good
support
example.
those who are unionized or who are not unionized.
unionized.
There are many examples.
Yes.
A young man, 20 years, got his hand cut. A researcher reported the matter to me when I was Secretary General. I vowed that I'll protect this boy, even though he was not a unionized person. I called my head of occupational health and safety to take the matter. And I'm very proud of that lady who took the matter and made sure Chief Labor Officer came in. We got compensation for the boy. He went and opened an account for her and made sure the money is paid there. And that part of the money is funded or fund his education in the university. Proudly, the boy has now graduated.
Wow.
Wow.
Well,
So
I think
unions can do a lot.
on this exciting note, I mean, with the story you just told us, and especially the education you've given us, that it doesn't matter if you belong to a union or not.
Yes.
Once you
to
feel
the union.
that you are not being treated fairly, the union can act as the
yes.
workers' police, can go there and report, and they can take the issue up. We'll go for a quick break. When we come back, we'll do our concluding statement. So stay tuned. Welcome back. The discussion is getting more interesting as we even draw closer to the end of production. But what we are saying is that it's one thing having the laws, the rules, the regulations that guide our attitude. And it's another thing ensuring that we adhere to those laws. And I want to find out from our panelists what they perceive as the enforcement or implementation gaps after the minimum wage has been determined. Because, for instance, let's take Mokola Market. I'm not saying that that's what persists, but obviously we have individual shop owners who have these people they work with. How do we ensure that these workers in these shops are not shortchanged, so that the very person who is an employee to an employer does not continue to be a burden on somebody whose minimum wage is not a living wage? So I don't know if Dr. Ban can start with
I
that.
think we have made this point over and over again.
Yeah.
If you are a worker in this country, a minimum wage is announced, and your employer is still paying you below the minimum wage, it is your responsibility to protect your own right by reporting to the Labor Department or reporting to any trade union.
Yes.
The unions are trained to handle issues like this. You know, I can imagine what you're talking about, but they are not the only ones. I can give you a better example, not my color example. There are thousands of Ghanaians who are working as domestic workers
Yeah.
in people's homes, where you have no idea. Nobody even knows they are there. My neighbors are from India. They have 3 domestic workers next door. I know because I meet them every day. The question is, are they being paid the minimum wage or not? And my answer is, if they are not being paid the minimum wage, it is their responsibility to make it known. They can go to any trade union anywhere, or they can report to the chief labor officer. Thank goodness now, the labor officers, they have the employment service, they have the homes, they have the offices in all the regions. Refurbished, thanks to some policy that the previous government gave. So you can always report. And if you don't report, you will be cheated, especially by foreign employers.
The expatriates.
Yes.
But Mr. Gumsin, don't you also think that it is also possible that most of the workers do not even know what daily minimum wage is?
Yes.
So that's why we make mention of the need for continuous education.
Yeah.
There's a need for us to use platforms such as these and many others to inform them, to educate them, and to draw their attention that, hey, this is your right. Yeah. So I agree. And I think what Dr. Ban said, I do not really have anything useful to add. It actually answers the question that you fundamentally have the right as an individual who feels that your pay does not meet the minimum standard. After you hear on radio or on TV, you then report. And like you said, there are a lot of the Labor Department, the offices across. In Tema, you find one in Accra, you find in the Eastern region.
Districts.
So you just have to approach. That is the starting point. Once these complaints are received, it will then trigger the next processes of meeting your employer, conferring with your employer, verifying, and if it is true, measures are taken to ensure that he pays you and even back pays you the month, the weeks that has not been paid or is not complied. So we are on course. If this is done, I believe that will reduce to the barest minimum the incidents or the numbers as far as the compliance and the violation of these fundamental rights are concerned.
Thank you. So we've, what do you call it, looked at current situations, the challenges possibly that are inherent in enforcing the determination, enforcing the determined labor, what do you call it, daily minimum wage. Dr. Ba,
Yes, sir.
looking forward, what do you consider as the key considerations for especially policymakers in ensuring that the daily minimum wage remains relevant and effective in the changing economic environment we continue to find ourselves in?
I think,
And this is the cake that we all would have to take a bite at.
Yes. I've said this here and in other fora that as part of the reset agenda, we need to have an agenda for resetting wages. And I think this must be a very important part of the reset agenda because public sector pay takes, as Dr. Graham explained, a very significant proportion of revenues. Therefore, it must be part of the policy. How do we have a reward system in the public service which is fair, which is externally competitive? That demands that we have to have a wage policy. And this wage policy must not be government formulating and adopting it by itself. Government should engage the social partners, engage the stakeholders, and agree on what they should do. And by talking about internal equity, we will say that within the public service, nobody should receive this number of times the salary than the other. So if we agree all those things, I can imagine that in the next few years ahead of us, the agenda, I've looked at the 24-hour economy agenda. The idea is to create jobs. In fact, between now and the next 10 years, if we go by what is in that agenda, unemployment will come to 4%, which is the natural rate of unemployment. But we are not just creating jobs. We have to create decent jobs. Jobs that people go to and they go home and they feel they've gone to work and they have been rewarded properly. That means that we need to move from the minimum wage to a living wage. It is very, very important. And that is the only way you can motivate. There are many things that motivate workers to put in their best. But I can tell you, wage is very important. Wage is the most important. The rest can add, but wage must be right.
Dr. Graham, your take on this?
Yeah, I think Doc is right. But for us as Federal Regional Sales Commission, from where we sit, we are excited about the transition, especially to the Independent Monument Commission. If this country is to run a 24-hour economy, there are other wage policies that will need to be incorporated into the future wage policy. As a public servant, if I work for 8 hours, am I barred from working in any other organization? If I'm going to work for another organization for, let's say, 2 hours or 1 hour as an additional salary, what will be the policy guidelines to it? These are critical things that we think will have to be incorporated into the new wage policy. So that as a public servant, you know that, look, you're a public servant, you can have only one full-time job. The rest can be part-time. So you can go work here 1 hour, work here 2 hours, as pertains in another country. What will be the policy that is guiding these things? So these are the critical things we are focusing on. And we think that when these things are done, we should be able to correct some of the mistakes in the past and be able to eliminate all the distortions and the inequities in the system going forward.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Kumsin?
So I think that Dr. Ban and Dr. Graham have said it all. I don't have any useful comment to add. All I want to say is that we hope that in going forward, the transition to an independent emolument commission will inure to the benefit of the ordinary worker, where we can go home and say, look, we've been fairly treated. I thank you very much.
I thought you were going to, reference what do you call it, the Constitution or the Labour Law to cement what you had said. Yeah, but Dr. Graham, let me come to you a quick one before we round up. You have severally mentioned the Independent Emolument Commission. What should be our expectation?
The expectation is that, in fact, as we sit now, we're expecting His Excellency any moment to establish the National Consultative Steering Committee. It is that steering committee that will see to the transition. That consultative steering committee will be made up of various stakeholders, and they will be at the national level monitoring what is going on and seeing to the smooth transition. Apart from that, we are also going to have lots of consultations, just as happened before the implementation of the single spine. Major consultations with the stakeholders. This time around, our stakeholders are not going to be only the unions and associations. We have the Article 71 office holders and other constitutional bodies that probably are not even unionized. We need to consult all of them and make sure that what goes into the new policy will be a consensus, something that will stand the test of time, because this is going to be a constitutional body. It is the anticipation that it will be a constitutional body because it comes under the determination of SARS of Article 71 is part of Section 8 of the constitution. Now I'm joining. It means that it has to go through a national referendum. And so it will take some time. But the act can be passed by Parliament through after the consultation, and then probably I'm not sure when, because we are doing a holistic constitutional review process. I'm not sure when the referendum will happen, so that it will also go to a referendum. Then it becomes a constitutional body, and when it's a constitutional body, it will now have certain powers, even enforcement powers to ensure that certain things are done. Currently, as a commission, if even we negotiate, we only negotiate, and when we conclude the negotiations, we go and sleep. It is after the next negotiations that the unions will come and say, this thing we negotiated was never implemented. So even now, we're trying to now reform our negotiation department so that they bring in more of these industrial relations work, so that they can even
continuous
monitor
engagement,
continuous engagement, and monitor compliance of what has been negotiated. But all these things will be enhanced during the Independent Monument Commission. And the expectation is that once that is done, if we, as a country, do it and do it well, it should stand the test of time, like our constitution or our democracy. This time around should be able to stand the test of time. The single spine had its own challenges, and sometimes certain political decisions here and there ends up distorting everything, the structure. And once we have an independent monument commission and they are an independent body, the expectation that these influences will all be eliminated. And so we'll be able to now maintain the equity, fairness, and transparency in the wage administration in the country.
Thank you very much. It's gladdening to note. I can't just wait to see the end of this journey. I'm just praying that it will be soon. But before we call it a day, let me start from my good brother. I'll call him the labor lawyer to give us his final thoughts. Pocket lawyers.
So I think that, we in organized labor, we are going into this year's negotiations very clear in our minds that we are dealing with a defective formula. And we've written to government that the workshop that we all agreed should be convened to review the formula should be held. We are waiting for a response. I have to put it out there that we are not going to engage in minimum wage-based pay negotiations this year without having to look at the formula. That will be my concluding statement for this meeting today.
Wow, this is an arrow sent ahead. Dr. Graham, since these two seem to have some commonalities, let me take from Dr. Ban, then I'll give you the last word.
When he speaks, I miss my time in the union.
Because I learned from you well.
I wish I were with them to ensure that we change the formula and get a better deal for workers of this country. I think workers in this country deserve fairer pay. The salaries that we are paying to workers in this country are not good. Whatever it is, people should feel proud to be Ghanaian. People should not walk on the desert to other countries because of what?
Money.
Our doctors, our nurses, our professionals are leaving this country mainly because of salaries. But I know that when we started Single Spine in 2010, there were situations where people, health sector workers who had left this country, came back because Single Spine pay did not exactly match what they were taking. But if you add the comfort of being in your own country to it, people prefer to come back, and they did. Then what happened? Years down the line, people are now moving in droves. Our salary policy, which we are expecting the Independent Emolument Commission to implement should address this whole issue and get Ghanaians to feel happy in their own homes and work here for the benefit and development of our country.
Thank you very much. Dr. Graham, you have the last bite.
First of all, let me thank Organized Labour and all the unions and associations. I must say that I never knew that the work I did previously was appreciated until the announcement of my reappointment. And the reception from all unions, was really amazing. It tells me that when you are working with people, you need to work well. And I want to assure Organized Labour that the consultation approach that was used in the past to ensure that we're able to implement the single spine will continue with the same consultation approach. And I believe that once we continue talking, we should be able to resolve all the issues and challenges. On the technical committee's work, I think the technical committee will be constituted very soon. I can say that I'm sure as early as next week, the committee may meet because I had a discussion with the minister yesterday on it. And I'm sure the committee will meet very soon. We'll look at it holistically, come with all the ideas. The idea is not to give all the money to the unions, but also to protect the economy as
what
well.
we're asking for is
So we'll review the formula, and I believe that whatever we come out with should be in the best interest of both government.
Taking into account the cost of living.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So, Dr. Graham, let me make this offer to you. You have spoken much about series of engagements you want to undertake, and basically it's sharing of information and collection of inputs to be able to set the ground floor for better engagement and understanding of whatever policies you want to churn out. We want to say is that when you consider all these things, don't forget Clock TV, especially Policy Pulse, where Ghana listens. Yeah. Thank you very much. So thank you for joining us today on Policy Pulse. We have had an insightful discussions about Ghana's national minimum wage and the intricate web of relations that exists between government, labor, and the employers. We have learned that while the national daily minimum wage is crucial for workers' rights, it is also essential that all parties collaborate to ensure that there's fairness and there's equity, and also, above all, it is sustainable. The risks of unilateral actions underscore the need for dialogue and continued cooperation. As we move forward, it is clear that addressing the challenges of enforcement and striving for a living wage are vital for the well-being of all workers in Ghana. We encourage our viewers to continue these discussions in their communities and advocate for policies that support fair wages in Ghana. To my experts, Dr. Abah, the immediate past Secretary General of the Trade Union Congress, I say thank you very much for coming.
Welcome, brother.
The knowledge is vast. You have become the library of labor issues.
That's true.
Thank you.
And we'll be referencing you from time to time. Dr. Smith Graham, thank you for the composure, willing to listen to labor, willing to drive the kind of policies that will bring harmony and peace in our labor front. I mean, your posturing is encouraging. And we pray that the good Lord would support your administration to be able to actually give the Ghanaian worker what is actually fair, so that when we go home, we will not feel, we will not muna because there's a didija.
Thank you.
To my labor lawyer, Mr. Freeman, thank you very much for coming. I mean, I enjoy your expose, the kind of references you make adds a lot of rich and base to our discussion.
Thank you.
And I cannot wait to have you again, wherever you are. Like we smoked you out this morning, we'll continue to do that. Viewers, I thank you for staying tuned. And don't forget that this wonderful program is solely sponsored by Hedge Trusts. To my producers, technical crew, I say thank you very much for all you've done for us and making this program a successful one. And to meet again and we come to your viewers' home, this is your host, Sifas Na Dosu, bringing you Policy Pulse from the studios of Clock TV. Stay blessed.